Hello everyone and welcome back to the second part in classroom meeting number 4. So we brought everything to an abrupt ending in the last section just so that we could get the whiteboard out and Zach could kind of chart along with what Chris is saying in regards to the stat system that he's got in mind.
Some part of me really wishes I could do like a killer John Madden impression.
So let's go ahead and get back up to where you were at. I'm giving Zach my notes so that he can jot this down for starters, and then Nato, I'm going to have Zach ask you questions as you're going through this, just so that he can make things as visual as possible.
Sure.
Okay, so he's jotting down your 3 main stats again.
Body, mind, and spirit. So this already sounds like...
No, it's body, mind, and soul.
Soul. Okay, sorry. Okay,
the names don't really matter that much. But
they do.
You better stand by the
they
names.
Do. Yeah, exactly.
When you design something, the names matter.
Yeah, it sounds like a band. We are body, mind, and soul.
That's
this
right.
was mostly written on 2 train journeys, down and back up from Ely, which is a 4-hour train journey, which is not that bad, but I got bored and decided to write stuff.
So you only want to work on amazing MMO stuff when you're bored? Oh,
No. I do my best work when I have nothing else to do because I don't get distracted. Because I can't get distracted on a train because there's nothing to do.
Okay, now
Just waking up in the middle of the night and going, "Oh God, I have ideas. Where's my pad?"
Okay. Well,
anyway.
Back over here. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we started talking about derived abilities. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring you back into the world. Actually, if you could, just to kind of help this video have a little more, I'll just say cohesion for anybody who's just kind of picking up and starting to pay attention here. Why don't you kind of go back over these points that I've already started to jot down, even in brief, and then we'll go from there.
Right. This is a tiered stat system. I'm starting from quite big, broad, general stats and breaking it down into simpler ones that are more applicable and more specialized. So to start with, I had the 3 main big stats. First being body, which is your physique, basically, which is your raw sort of strength, as well as your dexterity, which does cover sort of fine motor control and agility and that sort of things. It's very broad at this point, and it does get broken down. This stat also covers your constitution. It doesn't necessarily cover, but encapsulates all these ideas in one stat. The second one is your mind, which is your mental ability, your intelligence, your wisdom, and to a certain degree your perception. It's how smart you are, how sort of witty you are, and the like. Again, quite a big, broad area. The last one is your soul, which is your strength of mind, your will, and your conviction. It also includes your self-control and self-discipline. Now, as I said before, I had in mind that these stats would go between 1 and 100, possibly 1 and 200, depending on how it broke down in sort of balancing. I envisioned that a starting level 1 character, I say that in inverted commas because we don't know we're having levels yet, but starting character might have stats ranging between 1 and 5, and as they level up, again in inverted commas, they gain points in these big stats. So you start off quite low, work your way up. Hopefully as I go on it will become apparent of the sort of relative importance of these different tiers.
Okay.
Right, so the second tier of this stat system are derived stats. These are more specific, and they're more applied versions of the three main abilities.
Now, let's start throwing some terminology in here. We want these to be considered the three main or primary stats. Is that where we're going?
I have
with
these
now?
down as I had the first tier as general abilities.
Okay. Then we'll just go with that.
General abilities?
Yeah, abilities
abilities,
sounds
that-
inaccurate. But
Yeah, abilities kind of, that name bothers me.
Okay.
let's just go with stats for
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
I actually just got them down as general derived, and then the third, which we'll get into in a minute.
Okay.
But right, derived stats are, like I say, they're more specific, and they are based off a mixture of your general stats. I envisioned a percentage-based system, so each one of these derived stats is a certain mix of 100% of each of them. For example, you might have a derived stat that uses 50 of your body, 25 of your mind, and 25 of your soul.
Give me a name
to
for
come up
something.
with. Strength is that particular one I have down in my examples.
And that would be what again? 50% body?
50 body, 25% mind, and 25% soul. Okay, there are lots of different examples I have down there, but there's no much really point going into them apart from one particular one, which is, in some cases you may have two different approaches to the same idea. For example, persuasion, sorry. There are two ways to persuade people. The first being you can intimidate them into making them do what you want. So you would have that version of that stat would have to rely heavily on your physique, because you big, broad shoulders and big muscles and all that. So I envisioned it being 60 body, 10 mind, and 30 soul, because you still need a little bit of smarts, and you still need the sort of conviction to be very forward and similar. The other way of doing this would be to sort of trick them using your intelligence to make them think they're doing what they want to do, or actually they're doing what you want to do, which is you have 10 10 body, under the basis that it's I'd call it trickery, possibly, or it's 10 body, because you're not really using your body. You might use subtle body language, but that's not really your physique, as it were. You'd use 60 mind, because you have to think of exactly what you need to say next and you'd have 30 soul, because it doesn't take any more sort of strength of will and conviction to have the same effect. So that's an example of one that could be done in one of two ways. The way the system would decide which one you use would either be based upon, or by default it would be whichever one is higher, whichever one gives the highest result. However, I'm thinking now some players may decide that they are playing a very sneaky character.
It seems like, if at all possible, you'd want to give the player the ability to choose whether they want to be a physical intimidator or a sneaky little backstabbing person.
Exactly. But as you kindly added the little note there, that you would have a certain amount of distinction between players' abilities linking into each other. I haven't described that very well, but yes, the other way is that players can choose the sort of stance they wish to take on at a certain point. And how that's handled in a sort of player-controlled UI sense, I'm not entirely sure, but in the system, that's something you can decide which one of any of these stats, if they are split, you wish to use. I can't envision many cases where there are sort of two options of the same thing, but I wanted to put that in as a note. Another note to this is there is a fourth stat that gets added on to these derived stats, which is a bonus. That's added on via any sort of gear or ability that you have outgoing that your character can use. Such as, that an item they have might have a strength enchantment on it, so it adds 10 to their strength ability, to their strength stat, on top of whatever they've got, but that's in a percentage, so it adds 10% to whatever you have on that already. So if you only got sort of very low strength, this item's not actually going to do that much for you, but if you have lots of strength, it'll do quite a large amount. All of the exact numbers for derived stats are completely up to debate. It would be subject to a lot of balancing and a lot of points of percentages and things. The key thing is
there should be 10% body, wouldn't it? I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding what you said.
It takes the total and then adds an extra 10% to the current total.
That's what I'm asking, though. Would it be 10% of a given derived stat or 10% of a general stat?
10% of a derived stat.
Oh, okay.
So it would calculate the derived stat, take 10% of it, and add that on again to the top.
Okay.
I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't give. I'll go into that later. Sorry. Okay. The last group of stats are expressed statistics, which are.
Hang tight. Just
these are a little. Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
These are a lot more fuzzy at the moment. But essentially they are more specific statistics that are very, very case sensitive. People might get confused when I give some examples, but when I explain them, they probably will understand. Such as your hit, your amount of sort of your chance of hitting someone. In World of Warcraft, it's calculated as a flat number, which equates to a chance of missing a target. But I'm not sure how we want to handle that, so I'm not going into exactly how that would work. But other examples would be your hit points and such like things like that. They're very specific because they have no other uses to give but to give that stat. So now these would be calculated in a sort of simple mathematics of your derived stats. For example, your HP, your hit points, might be your endurance times your charisma, your constitution.
Just because we already used hit, I'm going to call this health points for now.
Yeah, sorry, that's right.
Just to give somebody something else to look at. And how are you saying that would be calculated?
For example, it might be your endurance, which would be a derived stat, times your constitution, which again would be a derived stat. Now, like I said, expressed stats are quite fuzzy at the moment. I'm not entirely sure whether they're A, necessary, and B, that useful. They won't, like I say, be very, very specific, mostly to combat. Not that the whole system is mostly derived towards combat, because player interaction is more fuzzy. It's less controllable in terms of a game system. Now, some people might be
Wait a minute,
wondering.
Gavin?
I'll go into that.
Is that Gavin asking a question?
I was just going to, because the other big chunk of it, you said, is the idea of reputation and how that's...
Yeah, I'm going to get to that, guys.
Okay.
See, that's what I meant by interrupting. Now I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, sorry. People might be wondering why there are these 3 tiers. One of my key ideas is that, like a lot of other game systems, you have gear or certain abilities or buffs, as they're referred to in a lot of MMOs, that improve the quality of your abilities, either for a short period of time or in terms of gear, for the duration you're wearing that item. Such as you might have a sword that gives you extra damage or extra strength or whatever. Like I said, the key reason I wanted to have 3 tiers is that you could have an item that gives you a decent amount of a general skill. For example, it might give you 10 body, which would mean that in all the calculations that have body in them, which is to a certain percentage, all of them are improved. So you could, like I say, get a sword that gives you body. This would be very, very valuable to you. This would be a very good item, because it would make everything you have better. Similar to this, you could have an item that gives you bonuses to a derived stat. This item would be less good. It would still be useful because those derived stats are then used to calculate your expressed stats. So it's still useful, it's still good items to have, but they're not of the same quality as the ones above, so they give you general, sort of general ability buffs. And you would also have a 3rd tier that would give you bonuses to express stats, which would again be very, very specific and would be not very useful, but while still being useful. It's a good example of this, which in WoW there are 3 tiers effectively of gear types. The first being sort of normal items, these are called greens, which are generally you get from quest rewards, and they often drop off monsters you kill in the world. They're reasonably good. They're okay when you're leveling your character up. So they'll give you bonuses appropriate to your level as you're leveling up. The next is superior, which gives you more bonuses, and you mostly get these from occasionally they come from quest rewards, occasionally from killing monsters, but a lot less than these sort of lower green tier. And then you have epic gear, which has a really it's a very big bonus, and they are best sort of items you can get hold of, for example, and you only get those from doing the top end content. I wanted to have a similar system, but instead of just having your epic items just have here is 200 strength, I wanted to have sorry, let me go back and explain that a bit better. Instead of your epic items giving you 200 strength, your superior items giving you 50 strength, and your green normal items only giving you 10, you would have your sort of normal items, your green items, giving you a bonus to a expressed stat, a sort of rare item giving you a derived stat, and then an epic item giving you a general stat boost. So the better item you have, the more use it is to you. It's an idea I'm playing around with, but I liked making the better item. I like making the rarer and better items better on the whole, opposed to more specific to your class and your ability and what you do with your character, which at the moment in WoW is quite a problem, because you can end up with your character having, because I play a rogue in WoW, and I have, my main stat is agility, so I have agility through the roof. I have 4,000 agility or something like that, but my intelligence is only 70 odd, and it makes your character seem less of a person, because you think, oh, if they've got 4,000 agility, they're really agile and awesome and amazing. They've only got 70, they're a complete idiot, they don't know anything, they're stupid. And it makes your character seem less important, less sort of good, less heroic. That's the general outline of the stat system, which it does need to have more eyes than me and Gav looking at it and tweaking it and deciding what we want to do with it.
You know, I'll just throw out there real quick, Chris, though, that is one of the things that I personally really appreciated with World of Warcraft when they revamped their stat system. I am watching everything that is scrolling by in the IRC right now, and there's some very interesting conversation that we'll get in this involved in this meeting here very shortly. But I was very pleased when they added the ability to go to a reforger, so that you could reforge stats from equipment to tweak your character the way that you want it to tweak your specific stats.
It did make a lot of the gear generally more useful.
Yeah, it made a lot of gear generally more useful. That's a very good way of putting it.
That was the big thing that I saw coming out of that, was that if you grab a random green drop, or even something that drops you off of a boss in a dungeon, it's not, you don't sit there and go like, oh, well, dang it, this doesn't have my primary stat, so it's completely useless to me, or it doesn't have my substat, so it's completely useless to me. No, take it to a reforger, swap a few things out, and now it can be useful.
And at the same time, they put their own form of checks and balances in place by, let's say you've got, 40 extra spirit that you're going to have. They don't let you...
No, it's like 60% or something.
I think it's 40%.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's a percentage that you're allowed to reforge. It doesn't do the whole thing.
Yeah, and then another thing, like I saw Nelson had said earlier, is the moment that you have, so many different stats in the game, and you, which don't worry, Nelson, I'll get you in here very shortly. But and then you have to start Googling, and as he just said, in his opinion, then fail, which I disagree with that, because it all comes down to the type of game that you're playing. Yeah. But at the same time, with World of Warcraft, as you know, Chris, now did you play WoW before your recent jump into it?
I played WoW. I started playing the End of Wrath.
Okay.
So I haven't been playing for very long.
Okay. So... Well, they had, but you were playing before they streamlined many of the stats. Then,
when did they do that? Was that the
end of Wrath 4.03 or somewhere around there?
Is that the one where they changed the talent system entirely?
Yeah, everything got changed around a great deal. Where to me, spell power used to be the huge thing, and then balancing that with my intellect for my mana control and all of that, and then suddenly they just lumped it all into intellect, and they just simplified it with one thing. It's like where hunters used to have to worry about mana, and now mana's gone for hunters. Right. They don't have to think about it, so they simplified it so that...
Which makes sense. You shouldn't need magic to aim a gun.
Yeah, really. But they simplified it for all of the characters, and now what you're laying out here is great role-playing stuff, and with an MMO, this is where it's going to get very interesting, in my opinion. We can't, I'll hold off until I get Nelson in, but there are role-playing elements to this. I mean, there has to be. We can't do a first-person shooter in an MMO style environment. It doesn't.
You do have to think a little bit about character development. Your character, while they are in the end, if you want to really boil it down, they are just kind of a clump of numbers. Those numbers need to make sense on some level.
But, okay, so anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there about having, when you had mentioned WoW, I really like the fact that they do allow you to go to a reforger and have equipment reforged, so you now do get some sort of control with the stats. But all right, continue. So the next thing that you were wanting to discuss.
Gav will hurt me if I don't mention this, but one thing we discussed is having a cap, a sort of hard cap to some of your skills. For example, if you are an acrobat, you need to have very good physique and you have to have a lot of dexterity. But if you have too much muscle, and you start to lose the sort of you start to lose your dexterity because you just have so much mass, so much muscle, you can't move at the same sort of rates. So you would have, in this example, you would have a hard cap to the amount of body that would be transferred into your acrobat skill, for example. So once you get past a certain point in your body skill, it stops counting. It's still 50% of that is still calculated down to the derived, but it would be sort of 50% of 150, even though your body is 160. If you understand my example.
Sort of. But I mean, I understand the very generic gist of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Well, this basically I came waded in with a feeling I've had that, as the example Chris gave there, we particularly see this with professional bodybuilders and types like that, where they can barely walk, they can barely move their arms when they're walking because they just have too much muscle. So it would be detrimental to their acrobatics or any skill that relied on good dexterity. But you'd still need to being strong does help you, obviously, run faster, jump further, and so forth. So certain skills beyond a certain point represent actually being detrimental to the ability. So as in this case, rather than having, for example, acrobatics being 60% body and a mixture of the other two skills, it would be reduced to 50% or even 40% at extreme levels. And again, the numbers are all in the balancing, but the idea being, I did have another example, but I just can't get it.
But well,
in my head at the moment.
What I was hearing earlier was that you have your general tier of stats, which consist of 3 things. And you guys can tell me if if I'm misunderstanding, because then you can correct me too. So you had body, mind, and you had soul. Now you're going to start using these kind of like ingredients, I suppose, to almost like drink ingredients, to mix up some shots of some derived skills. So let's say you have a derived skill. Hang on, yeah. You have a derived skill that is a shot called Acrobat, which is 1 part body to let's say 2 parts body to 1 part mind and 1 part soul. So you're using these like percentages, right? So
Yep.
what I'm not sure I understand where the cap comes into this, because it seems like if you change, okay, like if I just improve my body, then I mean I'm still 60% of my body is going to go into this, and then I mean like it seems like the percentage factor is going to balance it back out.
The cap
Gav,
is essentially.
Let me explain. Essentially, the point is that in my example, once you get past a certain point in your body, it's still 60% of your body is going into that calculation, but it sort of essentially ignores everything beyond a certain point.
Okay.
like I said, you could have 150 body, right? And let's say the cap is 150. Sorry, let me go back and do that again.
Sorry, can I just in your picture of the cocktail glass, the cap is the volume of liquid that the glass holds. You've got a certain amount of mind in there, you've got a certain amount of soul in there, and you can fill the rest up with body, but beyond a certain point you can't fit any more body in the glass because the glass isn't big enough.
Okay.
That's not how I'm seeing it, because
awesome.
The proportion, the glass is keep the same analogy, the glass is a certain size. You're always going to put a certain mixture in that glass. It's always going to be, 2 parts body, 1 part mind, 1 part soul. It's the strength of the drink that you're putting in that matters. For example, you could have, you've got your 60. I know this is stupid, but you've got your 60%. No, that's not right. Yeah.
Just go with it.
You've got 60% of your body, and that isn't. It isn't. You don't take your body and then take 60% of it and put it in. It's you're weighing your body in 60% to your other stats. So if your body is 100, you're taking 100. No, you would be taking 60, wouldn't you?
Yeah, this is me right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. You would. Yes. Okay. Should be a lot easier if I had a whiteboard. But yeah. You see.
You can tell me to draw something, and I'll sketch it out for you.
Would it be easier with pork scratchings?
Okay, change that body to 50, because then I can do the maths in my head a bit better.
Okay.
So you've got 50 body, you've got 25 mind, you've got 25 soul.
Okay.
And let's, for the purpose of this, assume that your body, your mind, and your soul stats are all 100.
Okay.
So they're all 100 at the moment. So the calculation you would get at this point for your acrobat skill would be 50% of your body, which is 50, 25% of your mind, which is 25, and 25 for your soul, which is again 25, so you end up with an acrobat skill of 100. However, let's say the hard cap for your body, for acrobat, is 100. And you get an item that puts your body score to 150. For the acrobat skill, it only counts the first 100 points. After the first 100 points, it ignores the rest of that stat.
I see what you're saying.
Because, yeah, it's a hard cap. It will be a number, not a percentage cap. So it wouldn't matter how high the stat got. Only the first X counts. You could institute a system where if you have an inverse.
Well, here's and this is just I'm just thinking out loud. It seems like you could also, if you wanted to, just determine it by the lowest value that you have available. Like, let's say this particular mix, if you already had, and now I got to start drawing. Oh, hang on. I've got other blocks. Let me use the blocks I've already got. Let's say you've got 100 down the board, right? Just like you said. You got 100 of each thing. And so a 50 on body, a 25 on mind, and a 25 on soul. Let's say, I don't know exactly how the arbitrary figure would work itself out, but let's say this yields an acrobat skill value of 10. I don't know where we came up with 10. For now, let's just consider that to be a magic number. You could let the lowest possible number that you have here determine what this score is. For instance, if your body, your mind, and your soul all jumped up to 200 for some random reason, then your acrobat score also incidentally doubles. So now your acrobat score is 20. Because your body is 20% better, your mind is 20% better, and your soul is 20% better. Meaning, let's just say, for example, yeah, you've got a much more solid build, but you also have the skills to manage that kind of build. You can do the things that you need to do to use that to improve your Acrobat skill. Now, I'm just thinking totally out of left field here. However, let's jump back a moment. And I'm just brainstorming here, folks. I'm not trying to compound an issue any more than I absolutely have to. But let's say your body made it to 200, and your mind made it to 200 as well, but your soul, for whatever reason, you let that wane and it stayed only at 100. That is the lowest possible value. So that is still going to be at 100 like these guys, and if that's the 25% factor, well, you also need a matching value that you can apply to mind, so this would also use up to 100. And you need a matching value that equates to 50% here, so you could use up to 200 here. So basically, your Acrobat score would stay as long as this number was where it was originally. This number couldn't possibly go up because you are locked down by the lowest value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's just
that would alleviate the problem. The main problem was we didn't want players to have massive stats compared to the others, which was the main nub of this cap idea.
I mean, I figured you guys had already said that your basic stats, your general stats already had a limit of around 200 anyway. But like I said, I was just trying to think it through, because what I don't understand is why we're having to initiate these skill caps. It seems like that would already be determined by how your general stats are being managed. But I could be misunderstanding where you're going.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Well, the best way the way I visualize it in my head is that that 50, 25, 25% is an optimum balance for the acrobatic skill. Having too much of something is as bad as having too little of it.
No.
Not as bad, but it is similarly bad. So, if you view,
I don't agree with you, and here's why. And let me just hear me out. Let's just. I think it depends on how you are in your head imagining this skill being calculated. I mean, if we were still going with this funny little mixed drink idea, just because you said, okay, let's say our mixed drink is 2 parts tequila, 1 part rum, and 1 part, I don't know, triple sec. I don't know what kind of drink this is, but it sounds tasty. Now, if you suddenly had 10 times as much tequila as you need, it doesn't matter. You're not going to use that tequila because you only have a little bit of triple sec and a little bit of rum.
Yeah.
So the lower values, the least amount of whatever skill you have, determines how much of that drink you can actually make. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I'm with you now. I misunderstood you misunderstanding me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just saying
sorry.
that the
No,
lowest number you have is always going to determine how much of something you can possibly produce. So if you were using your...
But it's going to be in the proportion that makes it the right stat, if you like.
Right, that means it always stays in balance.
Stat. Yeah, gotcha. It's as good at being an acrobat as you can be, given the limitations you have.
Right, if you needed to be a better acrobat at that point, you need to get more rum and more triple sec.
Yeah, and there's no point in getting more whatever the other thing.
Tequila, because you've got tequila coming out of your ears. Exactly.
There, yeah. Cool. That's better.
That's.
You mean 25% of soul, 25% of mind, 50% of body, leaving 75% soul, 75% mind, 50% body. Yes. Yes, that's what we mean.
What?
It's a question that Raven put into the IRC,
sorry.
so you need to be paying attention to the IRC as well.
I was looking at the picture. I can't read and speak.
All right, let's do this. Nelson, I take it you're around. Let me go ahead and bring Nelson for a minute. While we're talking about stats and all. Nelson, are you with us?
No.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I hear your voice. Yes,
Hey,
you are.
Nelson.
Hey, Gavin.
Okay, Nelson, start talking.
Well, no. Sorry.
Not choking.
Yeah, well, you said you disagreed with me in what I was saying with the IRC, Jason?
No. I was not disagreeing with the with everything that you were saying. It's just go ahead and give your perspective.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't have anything really specifically to do with what NATO's been talking about.
It doesn't have to. I mean, at the end of the day, somehow we've got to have the ability to measure one's ability.
Nice.
Oh, I know. But in the IRC, where I was having a discussion with a few people about complex stat trees and how, from what I understand, it generally what it turns out to be is that people determine the most optimal builds, and that's it. So no matter how complex you make these stat trees, they always end up being like very few viable builds. And then at that point, the only thing that they accomplish is making a person who's new to the game have to do a bunch of research into the most optimal builds before starting to play. And I always felt that that was a huge barrier to entry for me with RPGs, having to do a bunch of research beforehand, where that isn't really necessary if it doesn't even lend to there to be much variety between characters.
To interject, that is not on the part of the system, that's the part of the player. I started playing many a game where I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to play, and basically randomly generated a character, and had a perfectly good time and had a perfectly reasonable character. There is a desire in especially MMOs like WoW, at the top tier of raiding, to have the most optimal build so that you can be as
competitive
efficient as you can. Yeah. Now, that's become, especially from my experience, from what I've been hearing from people, as they've made raids harder, people have been much harsher on other players, expecting them to have gone and read it on the raid and gone and read up on their abilities and know exactly what they should be doing at any point in the game. I really don't like that. This system, one of the things I've wanted to do is allow players to hide this information. If they're not interested, they can hide it. They'll just carry on as normal. All they need to know is that if it is coloured green, it's not as good as if it's coloured blue or if it's coloured purple. As an item, they can put on them. And if they like the ability, there might be an ability called "Hit That Really Hard" that just ups their strength for the next 10 seconds to 200 times what it is now. And I might really like it.
Real quick,
it kills things
Chris,
really quick.
Chris, I have a quick question for you. Are you snapping something or popping something?
No, that's Nelson, I think.
Nelson, is that you?
Because I can hear it.
Okay, then it's just an anomaly with audio.
The timing of it, I think it's almost like Chris's microphone is kind of clipping in a way.
Okay.
And
I'm hearing it through my headphones. So
okay. So however the clip is being handled, it's resulting in an audible pop.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Okay. Good. All right. Sorry about that, Chris. Continue.
It's okay. But the point is that the player doesn't necessarily need to know everything about that ability. They use it because they like it. Sorry, I'm being off-put by that now because I'm trying to work out what it is. It might be because it wasn't happening when I wasn't talking. But I don't know why I'd be hearing it back to myself. That's really weird.
But no. Like I like what you're saying though. But but then like, if I was put in a position where there still was this complex stat system, even if the game tried to hide it from me, I would still want to know about it, which would be frustrating because I don't really want to know about it, but I have to.
But it's about exposing part of it. Sorry, jumping over you, but is the one bit that I'm more probably I think feel stronger about than Chris does, which is that the reason I particularly like the system that he's sketched out, more than sketched out, but is that you can expose part of it to the player without exposing the actual numbers and the deep meaning of it all. That you can expose the higher level, what is not currently showing on the screen, but the body, mind, and soul, and the sort of the stats that don't fall into these categories, i.e., your bonus, your gear numbers, your to hit your specific bonuses, your reputation, which is something I want Chris to just talk on in a bit, but you can present enough numbers to the player that they don't feel a loss for the sort of player who likes to do the maths and work the stats out.
It's essentially a level of detail to a stat system that you can.
Well, it's funny though because this the
also
entire conversations.
It's a level of detail to the player's interest, and it's scalable.
Well, the entire conversation in IRC started because you started with those 3 stats, and I thought that was cool. But I kind of had the question: when someone levels up, what do they stick their points into that they get when they level up? Just those 3 stats, in addition to perhaps some like Fallout style perks, or are they going to be micromanaging their derived stats, which doesn't make any sense because they're derived stats.
Well, the way I'd envisage it would be oddly enough, a combination of those, not a combination as such as an either or, in very much a sort of prefab and modify way. So you'd have for people who want to think of it from a higher level, they can just at level up choose to do the optimum, pick a first place, second place, and third place major stat, and it will allocate sensibly across evenly across their numbers behind the scenes to give that the best level up that they want, and that. Or for people who want to do it the old-fashioned D&D way and actually get in there and fiddle with the numbers, they can choose to base it off a prefab or just go straight in there and allocate their point allocation for leveling up as they see fit.
I did make a point saying to Gav that is, in my opinion, a very bad idea. Basically, the more freedom you give to players, the more likely they are to come up with a build that is incompatible with the game mechanics, as in the way monsters are made, the way encounters are made, under the basis of I don't really know what I'm doing, so I've put my points in places that I'm not really entirely sure, and I've run into something that is the same level as me, and it's killed me horribly for no good reason. So prefabs are good, giving the player the ability to entirely customize their character. As desirable as that is, I don't think it works as an MMO.
Again, though, it comes down to the question of what you expose to the player and what you don't expose to the player, and the degree of control you give them. But I like the fact that the multi-tiered nature of this system means that you do have a lot of options on that front, and it gives you a lot of control behind the scenes in terms of balancing the specific effects that are seen on the screen and heard in the screen by the player, if you see what I mean. You can tweak what effects specific things have. I'm going to stop there.
Well,
see.
Hang on, Nelson, 1 second. Nelson, 1 second, because you're about to actually get the floor. Because I know you hate stats altogether, Nelson. Do me a favor. Just what's your idea, or at least a direction that an MMO could take that would be interesting to you as far as determining one's capabilities
and improvement of those
and improvement as they level up.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and the systems I like and don't like. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to come up with something that's so incredibly organic as to not need any sort of numbers. But I've been able to sort of identify some of the things that I like, and you have you see these stats, and generally what you have is you have these stats, and then you have these things that you do, and then your stats are, like, for example, you have like archery or something, and that archery is based off of a combination of a bunch of weird stats, and that's sort of what I don't like. I mean, I played through Oblivion, and I sort of liked its major-minor ability system, or same with Deus Ex, where you had abilities for certain things, like abilities for pistols versus rifles versus whatever. So instead of it sort of taking away not taking away the abstraction, actually adding in a level of abstraction over those millions of numbers that I don't want to spend a bunch of time spreadsheeting out. Like, if I want to play a character that's really good with pistols, I don't want to spend a bunch of time spreadsheeting out every single individual statistic that is going to change how my ability to shoot pistols. I would rather just, when I level up, just hit a button that says, make me able to do this better. I think that's sort of the best idea that I've started to come up with, but I'm sure there's better ways to do it. It's just, like I said, I really dislike the micromanagement of the stats, especially when there ultimately are just going to be a few optimal builds, and it just seems so pointless that we should have to abstract away from the player, so you can't in the game decide, okay, I want to do this, or I want to do that, I want to be a tank, or I want to be a healer. You can't do that in the game. Instead, you have to Google what's the best build to be a tank, or what's the best build to be a healer. Then you sit there and input all that stuff in.
Yes, but your idea of fun is Half-Life 2.
I'm sure the majority of the 48 people in the IRC enjoyed Half-Life 2.
Yes, but
I did too, man. It was awesome, like 6 years
it's
ago.
not. My big issue with most MMOs and similar games on the computers, even direct D&D rips, is that they seem to forget the RP part of it. And I'm not saying, you've got to have the stats there for people like Jason who want to get spreadsheets out and get the numbers perfect. But equally, it would be nice to have a bit of more of a nod towards actual characterization. And I was actually trying to I approached the whole thing, which Chris very quickly pointed out would simply not fly. The level up screen is in and of itself pulling you out of the game. How you get good at things should be a result entirely of behind-the-scenes calculations, which are down to what you've done. If you've spent a long time using a bow, then you haven't spent a long time using a sword, so you get better at using a bow. But the level up, whatever happens when you level up, is the cake. It's the cake for the player to say, well done, you've made it a bit further in the game. Here's some flashy new stuff, now keep playing for another month. And I think he put it more elegantly than that, but that's the gist of it. You've got players like it, and you can't, and it's difficult to get away from.
Well, there's nothing wrong with leveling. Leveling up.
It's the chapter headings. It's the chapter headings of your life as a character, really. The level up screen.
I'm by that.
So I kind of compromised with the idea of, well, let them have some sort of high level access, but abstract away the numbers so that to a greater or lesser extent you needn't worry about them if you don't want to, but they're there enough of an extent to please the people who like their numbers crunching.
Yeah, the difficulty here is
It's finding that balance.
We're trying to appeal. It's still clicking, isn't it?
Yeah, it has something to do with you.
Levels.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know
I'm
why
not.
it's doing it now.
Don't worry about it, Chris.
That's
I don't
better.
know.
Here's just. I'm
Can
not
you
sure.
talk about rep?
Well, no. Let's not do rep yet, if that's okay. I want to stay on this a little bit longer.
That's cool.
Let's go into my crazy mind for just a moment. What was that, Nelson? God.
It's just Nelson being Nelson.
Real world. Right now, I can't walk into the hospital and perform surgery on somebody. I'm not going to be allowed. I couldn't try to perform surgery on Zach right now. It would probably result in very bad.
Still sounds like something you'd try.
And perhaps I could try, but I would fail miserably at it because I wasn't experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going to go back with the crazy way that I like looking at the whole future MMO concept, where I tie it more to reality, as that's one of the things I talked about yesterday, just letting people in a little bit on the way that I was seeing an approach to a much more organic world, where I like the concept of a world that I can go into at any given time and have no flipping clue what its state would be. Where with World of Warcraft, I can always tell you what its state's going to be when I go into it. Well, is there a way that we could look at measuring one's ability and the same way we look at real life for just a few minutes, and see if there's some way that we could make that work, or even just thoughts that could be considered later. In the real world, if Zach was going to go up against a professional fighter in the ring right now, I would definitely want to be there to watch it, but
I'd so Indiana Jones that fight.
You'd want a gun. Yeah. It would not end well for Zach, because Zach is not experienced with that. While I do love my stat numbers, I also love stat numbers that I earn. But that's just me. Instead of, I get my level up screen and I click +1 here, and then suddenly I'm kick ass with a gun because I've added one more point to the experience of that gun. That's just me. And I just did a quick look over here at Raven, where he said, skill trees, Buzz, and you know, I'm very familiar with you know, talent trees, skill trees, etc. But I mean, in the real world, what determines everything? It's our experience in the world, not just me clicking. God, I wish I could wake up today and say, you know, I've now leveled up. I'm going to put +2 in strength because, dear God, I'm needing it. And
right. Even though what you've been doing up to now has nothing to do with
exactly, because I've been just sitting in front of a computer and never getting out. But, you know, today I want my physique to... In fact, I'm going to put all of my damn points in today.
Well, I was just thinking something earlier, and I started to say it, and I didn't want to take away from what everybody else was saying, but what if the answer was kind of already in how these derived skills are working? Or just, I mean, and let's just say a possible answer. Let's say we were going with something like this, where you have body, mind, and soul, or we can call them anything we want. You can call them football, baseball, and basketball if you wanted to. But let's say they all start off at 100. And just for sake of argument, and we may need to find ourselves breaking up the derived skills into combat skills and, you know, menial skills. I don't know. But let's just say instead of using something obscure like acrobat, let's use something like archery, right? So this is how good you are, of course, with a bow. And it is 25% of your soul, 25% mind, 50%. Okay, and that's probably, you know, wildly inaccurate for something like archery, but let's just go with it. So for sake of example, let's say you kill a monster, and this monster is worth 1,000 experience points of some sort. So you kill it with archery.
Yeah.
And so you could take this experience number and divide it up by the skills that you used, so that 50% of that, like let's say you only killed it with your bow, you didn't kill it with anything else. 500 of that experience points would go into your body, and then 250 would go into your mind, and then another 250 would go into your soul, and then that just accumulates in each one of these stats, so that like some small percentage bar starts to increase, so that once that percentage bar fills up, this increments to the next level from 100 to 101. Did that make any sort of sense to anybody?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's blindingly obvious now that you've said it.
I do want to say this before it gets off screen, but George, Shivan Angel over in the IRC said, so could you track the character's response time, time spent running, time spent hunting, time spent bandaging themselves, etc. And their in-game experience will drive their stats. I mean, going back to the real world, hang on one second, guys. I'm gonna mute for just a minute because I'm not sure where the extra noise is suddenly coming from. Never mind, I found it. So 1 second and I'll unmute again. But a few seconds later, who was it that came back to him with, but do you want... Hang on, because I really want to find this. Oh, so much. Oh, there we go. Crispy saying, the problem is, though, say you have endurances raised by running around. Do you really want players running in circles for 4 hours leveling up endurance?
And that's how Oblivion worked. I used the heck out of that.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not saying quite as simple as that. Yeah. But I mean, in the real world, if I want to improve my endurance, I am going to go out to the track and run in circles and improve my endurance.
Yeah, I build up endurance by going for jogs every day.
I'm just I'm not saying it would necessarily be as simple. And yes, I know games not equal to reality, but what if we're wanting to create an MMO experience that is an altered reality, but just that, an altered reality where we can experience alien moons and alien culture and a human culture that's far, far more advanced than where we are now. We have enough games that have a window that pops up and I say +1 to this.
Yeah.
I mean, do we really want to just fall into that and stay in the same rut as where everyone else is, or do we want to explore how we can go beyond and into something new territory? Or do we just want to just keep saying, well, I shall add 1 point to my ability to use my bow.
I'm going to use my axe all day long, but as I use my axe, I'm going to dump that experience into my bow, so that by using my axe, I suddenly become the best archer on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I know that game's not equal to reality. I promise you, I completely understand that. At the same time, when you set out to create something like an MMO and you've got this massive multiplayer world, you're trying to establish some sort of altered reality that people can escape to and lose themselves in. So I'm just, I'm not saying that my ideas are the basis for anything that will follow through at the end, but these are things that would be of interest to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this out there. I'm pretty sure that this system I was sketching out earlier is more or less a reflection of what they do in Fable.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let me get. There you go, Chris. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey, wow, and you sound better too.
Yeah, I worked out what the issue was. I was transmitting on 2 different mics, and the lag between the 2 was making pops.
Gotcha.
You had like a built-in one on your laptop.
I also think while the mic's unmuted, it might be a good idea not to click, because those clicks are getting amplified as well with the mouse.
I muted myself, so it shouldn't have come through. That's interesting. It's probably because I messed with my audio setup, but fair enough. Yeah, as I said on IRC, I'm actually considering entirely doing away with a leveling system.
Gotcha.
So you don't have levels. The only problem is when you get into player comparison.
When you get into what, sir?
Player comparison.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Character comparison.
Whose is bigger?
Yes.
Well, you do need a certain amount of, right, what level is your character? Okay, you are appropriate for this content. A way around that might be a certain... It's not advancement points. The number of points, additional points that you have been awarded via your gameplay. It doesn't equate to a level per se, but it is a way around that issue.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here, Nelson.
Okay. Well, I mean, why do you even need that? Like, for example, in Stalker, I know it's an FPS, but there aren't any sort of barriers depending on your level, although you don't have levels. But you could, everything is always open to you. You'll just get destroyed if you try to go somewhere that you're not equipped for.
Yeah, but that's not fun for the player. It's fun. It's fun in.
Oh, it could be though. It was like for example, in Stalker, there's this part where, in the starting level, you have to get by these people under a bridge who want to charge you a bunch of money, and it was even though I died a 100 times, it was really fun coming up with a brilliant strategy on how to kill them all with just a pistol.
Yeah, no, I've played Stalker as well. The point in Stalker is that you are signing up to play the game for that experience. If you're signing up to play an MMO, you're signing up to working together with players, either against them or with them, to defeat.
I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't approach aspects of an MMO from a multi-strategy point in the light of what Nelson is saying. I also don't necessarily have a problem with there being zones of an MMO that you really shouldn't be in if you just started out. The big reason for that is not because it's not fun for the player if you just started out and you walk into a zone and a giant bear bites you in half and spits you out. But so that when you eventually get to a point where you are powerful enough to take said bear and rip him in half and spit him out, you feel like you accomplished something. Because you can remember, when you first started playing the game, this place used to just... eat you alive, and now you go in like, you know, the new sheriff in town, and you wipe the place out. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, that. I've had that experience in sort of Thousand Needles. I used to fly over Thousand Needles and go, "Wow, that place is so scary," or at least used to be. But the point is that if you don't have some sort of notification system of your basically, how does the player know that they are now appropriate level for that?
Right. You need some
without
sort of
going
baseline
in
comparison number so that a player could click on said enemy, whatever, and get some sort of feedback to say, "Oh dear God, this thing is going to tear me in half and spit me out, and I should avoid it at all costs for now."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's do this, guys. We just hit an hour and 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break for anyone that needs to grab some food, some coffee, use the bathroom, etc. And I'll go ahead and get this video dumped down. And in 5 minutes, we'll start back up and we'll continue right here and with a fresh new video. So thanks a lot, everyone. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.